This is Talkin' Mule Deer with your hosts Steve Belinda and Jody Stemler. Talkin' Mule Deer takes you on a journey to learn more about the Mule Deer Foundation, mule deer and black-tailed deer biology and management, tips and tactics for hunting, conservation issues, and even features some of our corporate and celebrity partners. Now, let's start talking mule deer.
Hey, this is Jody Stemler, and we are talking mule deer from the 2019 Western Hunting and Conservation Expo.
And I'm Steve Belinda, Jody's co-host, and we have a very important person with us. We have Miles Moretti, President and CEO, back with us.
Good to be here.
Yeah, and so Miles...
Miles, you were our first interview.
Yes.
Last year at the very start of the Talkin' Mule Deer podcast. You are still our number one download. It's still getting...
If you can believe that.
And getting a number every week. And quite frankly, we joke about this a little bit too, because we were just getting into the swing of things. We didn't know, so
it was
levels,
a little rough.
Steve's levels, on the microphones weren't that great. Weren't you quiet? You didn't have it turned
we
on?
had technical difficulties, had the mic turned off for first half of the interview, had to amplify it through the ambient sound that picked up off of yours, and then did it in a quiet room, so it sounded really weird. It was a very quick learning curve for Jody and I on this technology.
Yep, but we've gotten a lot better, and talking mule deer's come a long way.
It's come a long way, and I've listened to it frequently. I don't get to hear every week, but it's amazing how smooth you guys are getting. So I got to give you a compliment. You guys are every week I can just see it gets better and better.
Well, I've joked about this for a long time. I don't listen to podcasts, so the fact that I'm hosting one now is kind of funny to me. So it was quite a learning curve, but we've had a lot of fun. We've talked a lot of different things going on, and a lot of water has gone under the bridge for the Mule Deer Foundation over the last year.
Yes.
And that's why we wanted to bring you back on, is just to talk about some of the things that are going on. Lots.
Yeah, sort of like do a state of the Mule Deer Foundation.
Yeah. We've had a great year. I mean, last year was our 30th year, and now we're going into our 31st year, and I mean, just an overall picture, the state of the Mule Deer Foundation has never looked brighter. And there's a lot of tough issues we got to tackle out there, but as an organization, we're as financially secure and as working like a well-oiled machine, best we've been in 30 years.
Well, Miles, I think if the reflection of the attendance of the expo and the funds being raised from everything that's going on, I think that is a good indicator of how well MDF's doing. And also, the board members you're attracting. We talked to Kelly Poole the other day, your newest board member, young, dynamic, energetic, great pickup of a board member.
Absolutely. I can't wait for that episode to air. That's gonna be a really
you don't
good
attract folks like that unless you're doing really well.
Well, and I've had actually a couple of our current board members tell me that they would not have come on the board if a few years ago, just because they didn't feel like, they didn't know what we were doing. They didn't feel like, they knew what was going on. And now they said, we want to be on the board, so we want to be part of the Mule Deer Foundation, and so that is a compliment to the organization.
So Miles, you lead the policy effort. I work with you on a lot of that stuff, and remember a few years ago when we would go to an event or to DC, and we had politicians saying, "What is a mule deer?" Now they're seeking you out.
Right.
I mean, I think that's pretty crazy that these highly elected officials and that. Now when they see you come over and they go, yeah, mule deer, that's awesome. So.
Yeah, and that's kind of fun, and it's really, now when we call, they know who we are. We get appointments with politicians and different people, and, getting appointed to some councils and boards and stuff that we can, where we can help influence policy.
Well, and I see that trickling down through to the states and your chapters too, because almost every one of your regional coordinators is being sought out by the states on local policy issues, state policy issues, but more importantly, how to be a chief advisor for those states and those federal agencies and even private landowners on mule deer and conservation-related issues.
When I first started with MDF, the regional directors, field directors, were mostly fundraisers. That's pretty much all they did, and they had a lot of banquets the first 6 months of the year. The rest of the year, they did some things, a few things, but...
And that's important work.
It's not. I mean, that drives us economically.
Absolutely.
That's where most of our revenue still comes from banquets. But now they're involved on committees, and state wildlife agencies are our partners. And so they're on their committees. They're working closely on some tough issues. but also the chapter rewards money that comes out of the banquets and out of the local chapters. We're now able to leverage those dollars much more than we used to.
Yeah, so Miles, I know that you're, and we've talked to you about this on a separate episode with Jeff Crane. You're on the Wildlife and Hunting Heritage Conservation
Hunting
Committee.
and Shooting Sports Conservation
Oh, okay,
Council.
they've changed the name again.
Changed the name.
So, tell our listeners a little bit about what goes into the policy side of the organization and of your work. I mean, because a lot of folks don't know how the sausage is made.
Well, I always tell people you don't want to see how sausage is made or laws are made because it's messy and it's a lot of compromise. And you know, you got to show up, you got to be involved, and there's a lot of work behind the scenes that take place, and a lot of it is building relationships and building trust with these politicians and these administration officials. And so, you know, that's a lot of what you have to do. And then once you gain that, it really helps you work through some of the tough issues.
Yeah, so there's two things I want to talk to you about that you and I have worked on,
okay,
and that are huge successes for the Mule Deer Foundation for Conservation. And you deserve tons of credit for this. The first one is, well, the second one will be implementation of the Secretarial Order 3362 that was signed here at the Expo last year. But the first one, and I keep telling everyone that will listen, which in some cases isn't a lot of folks, but in some circles it's other.
No comment.
The 2018 Farm Bill included the Sage Grouse and Mule Deer Conservation
Yes.
Act. And that's something that we worked with you from the grouse partner standpoint. You and I worked on it. But you really carried the ball for that. Tell us how that process worked over 3 years.
Well, it started with we were running into some problems getting our projects done, you know, some bureaucratic things, and so we reached out.
Just necessary bureaucracy, nothing that
nothing,
was.
It's just this process was very cumbersome, very time consuming, and so we
and
asked.
you don't have that time sometimes after
Right.
a fire. You need to be able
Right.
to get in there and do some restoration projects. You don't have the time it takes to do
Right.
some of the background work and paperwork that was
Right.
being required.
So we went to Senator Hatch here in Utah, and he had a staffer that took the issue on, and we met many times with the Bureau of Land Management, made sure that what the bill we were putting together was not something that was really going to complicate their life, but so we worked hand in hand with the agency before we made the legislation, and then luckily, because we did it for sage grouse, we were doing it for sage grouse and mule deer. Well, New Mexico doesn't have any sage grouse, so we were able, but they have a lot of mule deer, and we were able to bring in Senator Heinrich from New Mexico.
So it was bipartisan.
And he's an avid hunter. He's got racks in his office in D.C., and him and Senator Hatch, who are probably pretty polar opposites, you know, and
Maybe not the farthest end of the spectrum there these days, but
they are out there. So, but they put this bill together, and we struggled. We had a companion bill in the House. My representative, Chris Stewart, here in Utah, was the sponsor of it, but it just wasn't getting any momentum.
Well, and it's not necessarily, I mean, it was a function of the process in D.C. these days where a lot of good stuff was not getting done. It was... There was visibility, there was continued bipartisanship, you were getting co-sponsors, but it wasn't getting the traction because nothing was getting done.
Well, what I liked about it is you didn't rely on one vehicle to move it. You put it out there multiple places, attached it to some other bills that died, and ultimately it landed in a bill that moved.
Yeah, and you know, kind of as the retirement gift, I guess, the Senate kind of made sure Senator Hatch was able to clear his legislative agenda, and luckily we were one, and they inserted it into the Farm Bill as it was being reauthorized. And as we know, the Farm Bill was a little nip and tuck there right before the end of Congress and the government shutdown, whether we would get that or not. But luckily we did, and it was in there, and the House approved it. The only change was in our original bill, the cap on the work was 3,000 acres, but they raised it to 4,500 acres to give us a little more flexibility in the work. But that's the only change.
So, Miles, just a quick synopsis of the provision in the Farm Bill for sage grouse and mule deer. It's for proven habitat projects, thinning, cutting juniper, even has some chaining in there and other things for those species habitat work. Up to 4,500 acres, still working with the local agencies on implementing this stuff. But we're going to be able to streamline the NEPA process, the National Environmental Policy Act documentation and approval process, to get these things out on the ground quicker. And it's going to allow some monitoring and maintenance of those projects through time so that they stay effective.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to really help us accelerate our habitat restoration program, especially on those areas that have either been devastated by fires or that are overgrown with pinyon juniper. Because really, a majority of the pinyon juniper in the West is under 100 years old. And so that's trees that have invaded into our rangelands. And they just aren't the best food for mule deer.
Yeah.
You know, when they are eating pinyon juniper, they're about to die. So we've got to keep those rangelands healthy, productive, and not just for mule deer, but for all wildlife.
Well, and with the advent of invasive species like cheatgrass, Medusa head rye, increased fires, and, you know, just natural succession where things want to grow into good habitats, we need to be more proactive.
And that sage steppe habitat type has been needing some of these projects to clear out, to get back to the more traditional sagebrush forbs, right, to get in there. So this is these projects. It's benefiting mule deer, but benefiting sage grouse, but all the 300 species that are that live in these sage steppe habitats. Right.
The other thing that's nice about it, Miles, is the product. If you do a thinning, or you create, you know, get into some really good juniper or other pinyon pine, you're going to be able to use that product. Now, there's not going to be a prohibition on it to offset the costs that it takes to do the work.
There's some real unique opportunities. In fact, we've run into some you know, usually if you want to try to use that product, there's no market for it. And so we're also helping to develop that, which will also help us to recoup some of the costs of the projects.
Yeah, and then the final thing I'll say on that, and this is extremely important, the Farm Bill has been primarily a private lands thing since '85, when the first Farm Bill was signed. Now, this is a public land provision. So for BLM lands and Forest Service lands, we're going to have the ability, you know, that the Farm Bill and future Farm Bills, we're going to be able to improve and expand on that habitat management, particularly in the West, where most of our public lands are. And I think that can lead us to a lot more opportunities.
But it has been private land, but the Sage Grouse Initiative was using Farm Bill dollars through the environmental quality.
Yeah.
So it's not unprecedented. It's not, I mean, it's a revolution, a connection of
Yeah.
recognizing private land, public land connections, the synergies between management across barriers, across borders that are really just a line on a map and really don't matter to the animals that are moving across between those.
You know, maybe in the livestock situation you can control them a little bit better, but in wildlife they don't know who owns the land.
So the second policy thing, Miles, we want to hit on was, as I mentioned, the Secretarial Order 3362, Big Game Migrations and Winter Range Conservation. Tell us a little bit about how that's moved forward and what MDF's working on there.
Well, I can guarantee you there's no way I saw how big this initiative was going to come a year ago when the Secretary of Interior was here.
Hey, that was a big deal. Come on.
That was a big deal.
But to see it actually come together is what's been fun.
I had no idea that it was going to – I literally explode across the landscape. Everybody in the world wants to be part of it and has different pieces of it. And so it has really been a game changer for us. And we created a migration and big game winter range initiative, and we're working with the state wildlife agencies, the federal agencies, that we can do a lot of coordination and also some habitat projects. And
we got a grant.
We got a grant.
Yeah, we got that $200,000 grant, and we have worked with a couple of the other states to put in for the habitat portion of that grant. You know, and we've also been advising these folks with our partners on how to implement this stuff. And I think that's the feedback I've been getting is thank God you guys are here and understand this stuff and can help us through this this new federal process.
Yeah, it's been a game changer, and it's really changed how we're looking at where we do projects. You know, some of this GPS collar data is showing these stopover areas. It helps us to key into those areas, important areas where we can prioritize our habitat projects, and just a lot of coordination with among the people that are using the landscape out there.
Great. So one of your key employees just came and sat down with us, Mike Lauder.
He is very quiet sitting down.
Yeah.
Very
I'm
impressive.
relaxing.
Well, we can say that Miles is busy during Hunt Expo, and it's true. But truly, your staff is usually much busier than you are. No, I'm kidding. But Mike Lauder is the director of field operations. He oversees all of the activities of the regional directors, helps with chapter development, big picture. We talked with Mike at the beginning of the season last year as well. So we're happy to have you back to talk about state of Mule Deer Foundation as far as chapters.
Oh my goodness, absolutely. Thank you for having me. First of all, there's so many good things going on. We're growing. We're developing. We're hiring new RDs in new states. We're entering territory we've never been.
Pennsylvania.
How about
Minnesota?
Yeah, Minnesota.
Expanding in Kansas.
We are running all over the place and doing great things, and I think it's just the perception of the public have finally found a place where they can come be part of the MDF family and become a volunteer, and we're on fire. This organization, we're the cool kids. I mean, everybody wants to be part of that crowd. We're a family-oriented organization, and our RDs are running around, and that's conveyed to the people that associate with our organization.
Just so you know, I'm the cool grandpa.
And I'm the son he never wanted.
Yeah.
So we had the volunteer.
He's the Godfather.
The Godfather, right.
We had the volunteer recognition event this morning, which is our chance to honor the hard work of the chapters and the individuals for what they do to raise funds for the organization, as well as to have those volunteer days that work, as we've talked about a number of times, about the in-kind that they
to
showcase what we're doing and making projects on the ground. Tell me a little bit about some of the highlights from
my favorite event of the week, to be perfectly honest with you.
I
am easily entertained, and that one for me is just the most fun. You have these volunteers from all over the United States come into one room for breakfast, and they're recognized for their efforts, whether it be efficiency at their own event or it was a participation on a project in sweat equity hours.
Yep.
We have more 60% net club chapters now than we've ever had.
That's amazing.
And now we're touching 70 and 80 and 90%.
Yeah, explain the net, how you come to that.
I draw this like a sword. I'd love to explain this. So we have what's called a chapter rewards program, which no other group has, to my knowledge. And a portion of the money raised at those events can be allocated by that chapter for a project in their area, in conjunction with their local fish and wildlife agency. So they, based on their efficiency and how good their chapters are and how well they perform at their events, are allowed to allocate a portion of those funds. Well, everybody is always shooting for that 50% mark. That's kind of where you shoot for in business. After that, good things happen when people support good groups, and we get 60, 70, 80, and 90% banquets now. That's when they get the meals donated, the facilities donated. It's super exciting. And now we're seeing hours. We have gold, silver, bronze hours, and we have thousands and thousands and thousands of hours that
That's so amazing.
Have you compiled that, Mike? I mean,
it will be compiled. It's brand new. It's only 2 months old, so we have the event, and then there'll be a compilation, and it'll probably come out in our magazine. I imagine that'll come across your desk, Jody.
I'm sure I'll see that, and that's good. That's always so exciting to me.
I stand up there,
so much.
and I am humbled to be in the room with those great volunteers, and it's so much fun to see how much how we've evolved as an organization, and the things that we're doing on the ground are super exciting.
Now, Mike, as we've been sitting here for the past few days, on the screen behind us
so Steve and I are looking at our interviewees while we're doing it, and their back is to a television screen.
Yeah, so on this big screen has been the projects accomplished.
For each state.
And the money spent.
The entire amount of money that they've spent, the individual projects.
And it's funny because those aren't necessarily current. That money's always being spent, so that's what it was when we went to press for the show.
Wow.
In the last 10 years, or even just 2018, how much conservation work did we get back to the ground from the Mule Deer?
Total across the organization, we were right at $3.5 million. That's all funds, not just chapter rewards, because we're really good at leveraging our dollars.
For habitat projects.
For habitat projects. On the ground.
I want that clear. That's not operating budget.
No.
That's on the ground.
And that's hard dollars, not the in-kind hours, too, correct?
Right.
So you can probably assume that there's a match or a leveraged
and it can be anywhere from 4-to-1 to 12-to-1.
Yeah, Randy Morris was telling us it was 3-to-1 or 4-to-1 in California this past year, which is just awesome.
Yeah,
it is. It's a great way to leverage your money to do a lot of great large-scale habitat projects.
Okay, so here's the massive important question. How do you top it? Where are you going?
Yeah, you know what? We ask each other that every year.
Every year.
But you know what? Every year you do. So tell us a little bit about what we've got going forward for 2019.
You know, we're on the right track. I'll start and then I'll let you finish with the big picture stuff. But Miles and I talk about this quite frequently. How do you top what we're doing now? Because every year's been our best year. You know, we're on a fast-moving train, and people are jumping on this crazy thing we have through this organization.
Did you just say they're jumping on the crazy train?
The crazy train, absolutely. That's the headbanger in me, Johnny.
They played that last night.
They
actually,
did.
when
For
John
the younger
Mayer
generation,
It's still in my head.
Ozzy Osbourne reference.
Absolutely.
Yep.
I can do that all day. So anyway.
All aboard!
Anyway.
He has the laugh perfect.
We're doing such great things.
Dun, dun,
we don't know
dun,
how
dun.
we keep topping
Stop it. Mike's talking.
Jesus.
Be respectful.
We got to just stay focused. Stay true to the course.
Stay focused.
Stay true to the course, Steve.
Yeah.
That's what's made us special, I think.
No
we don't
doubt.
deviate. We don't get off the path. We are a habitat, mule deer, volunteer-based organization. We don't get caught up in a lot of the other things that can distract from our cool, common goals or our true goals. And I think that's why we keep getting better, and we're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Anytime you're bettering yourself every year, you're on the right track.
And again, it's getting noticed not just, in every state, all of the agencies, all the way back to D.C., and a lot of, the press coverage of projects, of events, the things that Mule Deer Foundation is doing,
Well, I'm impressed every time Jody and I or we have an interaction with one of your staff. The things they're doing, the places they're going, the money they're raising is just phenomenal. I don't know where they get the energy.
Yeah.
And that's got to come from you guys. That's really got to be you're letting them out there, you're setting them free, you're giving them a goal, and they're just exceeding our wildest expectations.
Go ahead, you tell them.
I have a sports analogy. A lot of the time, we don't have a real structured way about how to be successful. And I use sports analogy. If I call a post and you run a slant, you end up in the end zone, you'll never hear from me. So they're finding creative ways to get into the end zone. And whether that be through recruitment, retention, habitat, working with their state game agencies, we've set some criteria for each RD. We want them on their state committees. We want them to interact with their state agencies. We want them to be Mr. Mule Deer in their own state. And these guys aren't working here for the money. They're working here because they're passionate about this organization. And anytime you're passionate about something, it's real. And that
conservation is real.
It spills over into the volunteer base, in my opinion, and then they take it to the people that they come in contact. That's the growth you're seeing.
It's hard not to be inspired and motivated when you go out there. When you see the projects, when you get out there and put your hands out, you go to a banquet and start to, or come to the Hunt Expo and see these dollar figures there. You see the aisles filled. It's hard not to be inspired and say, wow, this is, again, part of the crazy train or good train. I want to get on.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I know when I go visit with a government agency, biologist or executive, I usually reach out to the field staff there and say, okay, give me a fact sheet. And I'll go in and they already know what y'all are doing. I don't have to explain it to them. We're received with welcome arms, and they're like, how can we do more with you? So, that's
a cool time to be part of MDF. It really is.
Yeah, and I think that's the passion and of our employees and our volunteers. A couple of years ago, it just started like, I use the term our volunteers were on fire. Literally.
When we're dealing with the ramifications of fire, that may not be the best analogy to use. But
man, it's just exploding in the enthusiasm and infectious. And it's infectious among the whole group. But what it is they're out there and they're doing fun and they see they're making a difference. And that's really, really what's attracting people to the
fruits of our labor,
Absolutely.
I guess.
Yeah.
So, Miles, one of the other big things that I think's going on is the stewardship program and the expansion and, bringing Kevin Zeman on and really, getting that ramped up to a couple $1 million a year.
Yeah, and those are really good projects. They're can be expensive projects, but they're also accomplishing so much more than when I first started, we didn't have a lot of money. We were doing random acts of kindness, is what I say. Now we're actually being able to impact landscapes, and that's now where we're starting to see some really dramatic results.
So, guys, anything else we need to be looking forward to in 2019? Any special events?
If you haven't had the opportunity to come to one of our banquets, put that on your schedule.
Yeah.
That's something you should get out to.
And we can find that
Where
schedule
can you find that?
on muledeer.org.
Yeah.
A banquet near you, they can get you lined out.
Yeah, and if you're not a member, we'd love to have you as a member to get our magazine, find out more about it. We send out news releases, e-blasts. But if you want to be part of something fun right now and you're not a member, you need to be a member of the Mule Deer
Come
Foundation.
join us.
Come join us.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. I
Thank
know
you.
Hunt Expo is so crazy, and I'm teasing because Miles obviously is always running around just as much. So it's not like he sits
Yeah,
there.
Shauna says I got to go sign checks now.
Gee. But we really appreciate you guys carving out a little bit of your time to help us see where things are and to kind of celebrate the 1 year of Talking Mule Deer.
Yeah.
Look forward from what we got going on.
We
in the new year.
appreciate you guys giving Jody and I this opportunity to basically promote and advertise what we're doing together.
Yep.
Excellent.
And we really appreciate your leadership. Both of you guys are great helps and, are doing great things for conservation. And I think we can only go up from here. So
Well, we appreciate you guys and the good job you do.
Yeah, maybe you guys even should get a raise someday.
Now we're talking.
with
Mule Deer.
that,
I'm going to keep talking about that.
We'll save that for
No.
another program.
No.
so if you see Miles or Mike or any of the Mule Deer staff anywhere throughout the year, come up, thank them, buy them a beer, buy them some coffee, sit down with them, and really let them know how appreciative you are as a conservationist of what they do.
Offer to help because
We
you're
love
always
talking
welcome.
to people.
We do.
So until the next time, this is Jody Stemler.
And I'm Steve Belinda, and thank you for talking mule deer.
Thanks for talking mule deer with Steve Belinda and Jody Stemler. The Mule Deer Foundation is the only conservation group in North America dedicated to restoring, improving, and protecting mule deer and black-tailed deer and their habitat. MDF is a strong voice for hunters in access, wildlife management, and conservation policy issues. To find out more, visit www.muledeer.org and stay tuned for the next episode of Talkin' Mule Deer.